Okay, I guess we're ready to call to order. Cara Foley called me earlier today or texted me and said that she had a family emergency, won't be able to make it. So we'll have to carry on without her tonight. And I'm going to call us to order. And Leslie is our first presenter. She's traveling from Provincetown, Leslie Sandberg, Provincetown Select Board. She's going to give us a presentation on the Provincetown short-term rental bylaw, how it's working, or I should call it a regulation. So she's still in traffic, so we're going to take something else out of order. And rather than take out of order the what other towns are doing, I thought we'll wait till Leslie does her thing and we'll talk about other towns afterwards. But first, let's review the Falmouth short-term rental bylaw. And Tom had shared with me some comments, and I suggested that rather than share them in advance of the meeting with other people, because that might be an open meeting law, that we would share them here today in our public meeting. And we can consider them. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we should do the minutes first. Did
Okay.
everybody have a chance to?
Yeah, but it's on the agenda.
Oh, it's not on the agenda.
Oh,
I didn't put it in. Rookie mistake. Sorry. All right.
I think this is the same.
So
Thank you.
we'll go right to this then. Sorry, we'll have to do the minutes next time. And Liz did a great job with the minutes, so
Yeah,
if only we
yeah.
could approve them.
and thanks for taking all our comments.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me, is the town council representative is not
I'm
sitting
not
with us?
on you, I'm not, I am available should you wish to ask any questions, but I am not a member.
He's not a committee member, right?
Of the
Oh,
committee,
okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm over
He's,
here.
he's got his own little office over there.
It's sort of, darker over there.
I will fall asleep. I promise.
Okay, so I'm sure we've all had a chance to review our own bylaw.
I forget the agenda. I don't have it open. Do we take public comments?
I didn't put public comment on. I thought they would just comment during
Okay, got it. Okay.
each item.
Yeah.
We only have a few items. That's a good point, though. For next time, I'll make a point of that. Public comment and minutes. And time of meeting. That's important too. Should be on the agenda.
Right.
Luckily, you all knew. So, Tom, do you want to start off with your comments that
Yeah,
you just shared? Did everyone get one?
Mhm. There's
Okay.
one extra if anybody wants it.
So this is Tom's comment about what he thought might be improving our own short-term rental. You want to read it off and get started with it?
Yeah, I'm not going to actually literally read it, but go over the high points. But Doug, just before I start on that, if I could just comment publicly that, I'm really disappointed there's no regular staffing for this committee. I think we deserve it, and it's just a regrettable choice, and I want to state that for the record.
All right. Hey, how are you?
So, it's Tom Crane. The background, I think we've sort of gone through, but I think it's very clear to me that unless short-term rentals are permitted in any of our bylaws, they're not permitted. And the reason why that was important to me, and by the way, this is a memo that went to the select board and was discussed at the 29th meeting, or I forget, maybe it was the 26th meeting, but in late January. But so first of all, and we've talked about this at the first meeting, what we're doing in proposing the bylaw is to whatever we do will legitimize on a going forward basis certain practices. Some of them have been with us for the ages. But what we're not doing is restricting any existing rights. And that is really, really important to me. As people, as the public absorbs what we're trying to do, we're trying to deal with an unregulated mess right now and legitimize things. But right now, there are a whole bunch of practices that have been tolerated informally we're going to get our arms around them and do something really fair that meets as many requirements as possible, but we're not restricting anyone who has an existing right. And one of my takeaways of that is it's very hard in that view to justify grandfathering. I would not be in favor of this committee justifying any grandfathering. By the way, in this memo, I just called it the Article 32 draft because it was before town meeting in the fall of 2024 as Article 32. It's going by lots of names, but that's what I use it in the memo. First of all, I thought what they did is a really good job. And, I think we need to tweak it here and there. But, I'd very much like to see, and I come down on the side of the people who would like to, whatever we do, we work with this draft, the last fall's draft, as the fundamental starting point, as opposed to we're starting anew. So my biggest concern, very frankly, is I think the committee last spring really, paid far too much attention on the type of ownership. And I think that's really misguided in a number of ways. As you hear me talking about it, I think the fundamental concern I have that I'd rather focus our energy is on what I call investment-only properties. But so I'm focusing more on the type of use rather than the type of ownership. And just as one point, so this is the first bullet. It's a long bullet at the top of page 1. I don't think there's any rational basis, in my view, to restrict corporations. I mean, in the draft, it already, and you see this, and I think Provincetown's draft, they say no corporations, but they say, oh, LLCs are okay. Well, LLCs are a form of corporation. And they also, Provincetown very properly allows Chapter S corporations. And so I would very much like our approach to shift away. I think it's just a slippery slope focusing on ownership. I also think it's very, very hard to draft. So as I said in the top of page 2 is I think the focus should be the relationship that the owner has with the property. And as I said, focus on owners that are really just making this an investment play. And, so in turn, I discuss, and I'll get to it in a second, other ownership models. And I think I don't feel there's much need, in my view, but it's obviously a committee decision, as we look at other ownership models, to have a very restrictive approach. And in particular, in my view, we've had a history for decades, and maybe it's 100 years, where everyone's had a dream of owning a property on the Cape. And so the economic conundrum for many families is, they really can't swing owning the property full time, but, if they come down here and enjoy Falmouth and enjoy the property for a couple weeks with the family, but the rest of the year they rent it, the economics work. And I think for those kinds of rentals, I would, yes, they have to register, but I would really use a very, very light hand.
So Tom, before we do
Yeah,
the
sure,
whole
absolutely.
thing, I get your initial
Yeah.
prime points. Let's get sense from everybody else.
Absolutely, great.
Their take on the existing bylaw and what's the substantive change that you see that you need if there are any. Liz, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, yeah, I'm thinking about your kind of categories of relationship, Tom, and I think that that's an interesting way to think about it. I do remember there was quite a bit of discussion about the corporate ownership component. I will admit that that's a category of information that's pretty new to me. So different types of corporations are not something I'm super familiar with. But I think if we're trying to imagine and keep our eye on our big picture goals, I think that considering the relationship that the owner has with the property is what maybe that was attempting to get at, right? With the idea that I think the thinking was if it's a corporate ownership, someone's imagining a big corporation without a connection to the home where it's an investment only property. Mm-hmm. But from what you're sharing, Tom, I'm seeing that that's not necessarily the case for a corporation. And so I think it's good to reconsider this component.
I do agree with that as well. Did you have any major flaws that you think that we...
In our whole draft?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. So I'm very glad that we're having a chance to go at this again. Beginning at the top, the purpose. I was impressed with what Provincetown has got, with what Plymouth has got, somewhat with Great Barrington. There was something to learn from each of them. I agree with Tom that probably just keeping this skeleton is a good idea because it will make it easier to explain to town meeting that we are building on what we already started with rather than abandoning it and starting over. Right. But I think that we can learn from the others. First of all, I found the tone in the others clearer. Fewer words, clearer understanding. Mm-hmm. So there'd be that, to work toward that clarity. And that was particularly true for me in the purpose and intent. And looking through it, what we said, it more or less agreed. Those are our purposes and intents. I did ask at the last meeting that we want to maintain the residential character of neighborhoods, that's an important purpose. Mm-hmm. But the other purposes are fine. But we can make it clearer. That's true. And I kind of like the presentation that numbered them. That just makes it easier to follow. Mm-hmm. And then going through them, ours doesn't differ from the others much in the things that they are doing. It's in how thoroughly are they doing it. So from Provincetown, for example, you can pick up definitions that we didn't choose to define that in fact could be defined and would be useful to have definitions for them, particularly, for example, this business of the people who are representatives of the owners, because frequently what everyone's dealing with is a representative of the owner, and yet we don't allow for that on our definitions, so that we could be doing that. So we can pick up on definitions. Booking agent was one of them, owner's representative, whatever we choose to call them. We seem to have left out a couple of things that were included that maybe we want to think about including them. We didn't add a limit of the number of occupants. I didn't find, maybe I didn't read it carefully enough, that we're requiring insurance to cover what's happening there, that we do not prohibit renting on an hourly basis, so we could have all sorts of flagrantly bad things going on. And we do not require a minimum number of nights, although interestingly enough, now Airbnb is requiring a minimum number of nights. Yeah, they apparently. Charlie McCaffrey told me that. He's an Airbnb person. And anyhow, I didn't verify that.
Maybe it's coming. I don't think it's in play yet.
Oh. Anyhow, something we could consider, requiring a minimum number of nights, so you don't have somebody coming just for Saturday night and blowing town before you can do anything. I don't know whether that's an important thing or not, but it's mentioned in others, and it might be something we want to consider.
Yeah, I don't think you can stay just one night, so I think that's already been in place.
Here?
On Airbnb.
Oh, it's already there then.
I think it's at least a 2-night, and
it's
I think they encourage a 3-night minimum.
Yeah, and some towns are saying, some towns in Rhode Island are saying, no weekend, it has to be for the whole weekend, so that you go and try to make an arrangement to stay one night and nobody will let you do it. Right. Yeah, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, then under the enforcement side of things, we don't have, P-Town has I thought a pretty good enforcement section, because they tell you the consequence if you don't do this, we're going to do that. So that might be a thing that we could add. We also don't have a provision for appeal. Is that because we have general provisions for appeal somewhere else, so we don't need them here? Or not? Do we need a severability thing? Do we need an effective date? So I was sort of looking,
We did have a blank effective date because we knew that we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah,
so we'll have to think
forward.
up a new one.
sure.
But those are the ones that I thought we could add and make ours stronger. I didn't find anything that I thought that we ought to get rid of. I just thought we could be careful with our wording, that it's as clear as possible, but that's particularly true just in the purpose and intent section,
Right.
which tends to get flowery anyway.
Jim,
That's
did you
what I
have
thought.
anything that stood out to you that seemed like it could be better?
I think a lot of the points were well made. I would caution, due to my own experience, I would caution against allowing corporations because of the enforcement portion of it. It's very difficult to enforce. The right of appeal in this would be to district court, just like any bylaw citation. So if you're going against a corporation, the general practice of the Falmouth District Court, which isn't much different than most district courts, is they won't issue a complaint against a corporation. They need a living person. So that might be, especially with the Provincetown one, why they have that, because they do have the bylaw citation portion in their enforcement.
Well, any corporation to be served has a registered agent.
It does, but they won't do it because it's the corporation that owns it, not a person. And that's, I think, why you see the reference to live ownership. You have to be able to, even in the LLCs, the provision is there has to be an actual real person attached to the LLC.
That's a really important
Yeah, both
point.
P-Town and
So that could
Plymouth did
affect
that.
our enforcement in the
Yeah.
long run. I did also like the idea of that, going back to the agent. A similar type of bylaw that we have now in town is the alarm bylaw, which is not very well followed. One of the provisions of the alarm bylaw is that if you are not a resident of the house, you have to have some sort of agent that can respond if we have an alarm call at the house. When that doesn't occur, which is very often, it presents a huge problem, especially if there is an actual issue at the residence.
Right.
So I think having some sort of local agent that could respond if there is a problem at the house, or at least be contacted, I think would be a critical part, especially on the enforcement side of this.
Interesting.
And I believe that was one of the components
Yeah,
in the draft, was that there needs to be
Person.
a contact person that could be
24 hours.
contacted 24 hours
Yeah.
a day.
Correct.
And I know Kara, when we had our first meeting, spoke about, through her business, they have agents that would represent, their clients, so that they have one central person that has, the ability to respond to the house if there's an issue with the renter, and to respond if there is an issue, on an enforcement side as well.
Right.
it's one of the major problems there is that these are unsupervised hotels and you do not know anybody to come and take responsibility.
Correct.
So
You can't go to the
plugging that
front
hole
desk
is
and say,
critical.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I like about the Plymouth bylaw is the way it describes the authority to regulate in the beginning. And I like all the definitions. I think that we could certainly learn a little bit about adding some of those definitions to so I think we have good structure to ours. We just need to add and supplement with some of these things that the other towns are doing. And I think that Tom's point about the ownership, even though Jim made a good point about corporations, the ownership the use is more important than the particularity of the owner, except with the corporate exemption. And I'll be interested to see what Eric comes up with about how do we effectively exclude corporations. I think we mentioned it in here, but I don't know if we really nailed it down 100%. So
I didn't. I think that's something that, generally speaking, your committee would want to attempt to come up with what you want as specifically as possible, and I can help edit the language, but I don't know if it's my role to really write a section.
no, I don't want you to write it, but just guide us to make sure what we're doing is legal.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I think that even I'm just re-looking at the Plymouth example, even in their definition section, they have the operator/owner adjacent STR and the operator/owner occupied STR. So even in the definition section, they're starting to write these two separate definitions for two different relationships with the property.
Exactly. Another thing I noticed, received some comments during our working group that there was an example of a family in Woods Hole that had two brothers that inherited a house that the parents, I guess, had traditionally rented part of the summer to offset the cost of the ownership. And then the parents had passed and the two brothers were still carrying on the same thing. And they made the case that the fractional ownership mentioned that we put in here was problematic for them. So they wanted some sort of provision that would protect their right to carry on what they've been doing. I did notice that, I think it was the Provincetown has anyone who's been using their property in existence already would not be prohibited. So that's a form of grandfathering.
It is, yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
So I kind of feel like that's something we might want to consider as well, even though I know you just said you don't think it's a good idea, but I feel like we might need to consider it.
Again, I come down, it's all a committee vote, but I come down, and by the way, I read somewhere, and obviously I defer to town council, that grandfathering actually may, and this came up in Nantucket issues, raise commerce clause issues, because we're dealing with two similarly situated people in a different way. And given the purposes of the regulation, what's the rational basis other than, gosh, you're already doing it, to permit it? So I think there's some real legal issues other than my distaste for grandfathering. And also, like, what does grandfathering mean? Well, they certainly have to come in under the bylaw and register. Yeah. And so, like, okay, what are we permitting? And so it's clearly an issue, that we need to discuss.
We'll have to work further. So it's a great time for maybe some.
But Doug, can I just, I wanted to finish a couple more points.
Okay, go ahead.
So in my memo, I also, I think somewhat for the reason these Woods Hole people approach you, I don't see a rational basis to prohibit fractional owners. I mentioned it in here, whether it's a conflict of interest, I don't think it is. My brother and a cousin and I, we own some property. We never put on a short-term rental basis, but if there's family ownership, I just don't see the problem in family ownership. Now, what may be helpful, and I won't scroll through the materials, but one town at least had a very helpful definition, and it said, define fractional ownership as between unrelated people. But again, once again, in my view, we're focusing more on ownership than I think what I'd like to see us focusing on use. The other comment I have is in our zoning bylaws, I can pull it up if you like, we permit owner-occupied short-term rentals.
Boarding house.
Yeah. No, I think maybe it comes in under boarding house, but it's different from a boarding house in that the requirement under that bylaw is no more than 5 rooms get rented and the owner has to occupy it. Mm-hmm. And I would just like us to consider, because I don't really understand why that was left out of this bylaw, or at least, it's left out of this bylaw, this draft bylaw, because the introductory language says anything not regulated, and then it refers to that zoning bylaw. So because it's regulated there, it's not covered in the draft bylaw. And I think, once again, given the model I want to work on, which is the relationship of the owner of the property, that's their home. I don't want to restrict it in any way, but should they come in under the bylaw and be registered, et cetera, I think is worth a discussion.
Hey, Leslie, how are you?
Could I comment on something Tom said?
Yes, please.
He said he didn't find any logical reason to leave out fractional ownership and don't grandfather and so forth, and I don't agree with that. I think there's a very logical reason. In each instance of a licensee, you want one person who's accountable, not a group, whether they're related or not a group. So that you need to narrow it down in the way you define it, so that you've got one person who's the accountable person for that license. And if you have a house that's owned by several people, they're going to have to choose among their family members which one is going to be the responsible person for that license.
But why is that a problem to draft it exactly that way?
It may not be a problem.
So that gets rid of your concern.
It may, I'd have to look at the language and so would you. But whether it turns out to be forbidding fractional ownership or saying there needs to be one accountable person, live individual for each license, either way. But I think that you do need that.
And I completely agree with that. I absolutely think whatever regulatory authority is going to, whether it's the police or the health board or whoever is going to deal with the property, absolutely need one person to contact.
Right.
There's zero issue about that.
And I wish there was some way to limit it to one person locally. So it's either the licensee or that they've delegated that responsibility to the owner's rep. So it's somebody that local people, when a complaint comes in, they don't have to go to Arizona to find the person they need to talk to. It's going to be somebody here that they can deal with to solve an immediate problem.
Well, we're definitely keeping that
Right.
part in, I think.
And
Yeah,
one of them,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think it was Provincetown, had also dealt with this business about family property and had allowed that if you have been doing rentals in the pattern that Falmouth and the whole Cape really does rentals, and now you up and die and your will, can you leave that to someone? Yes, they've allowed for that, and I think that we should allow for that also. But then they are held to the same rules, annual renewal and so forth, that each one of the ones that we have looked at as a model all require annual renewal.
And
Right.
so, just so I understand what you're saying, even if it's investment only, and they're like, forgive me for Seattle, but they have no connection with the property, they never come there, they pass on the property to a sibling, you're okay with that?
No,
Okay, but
we're not going to do investment only. So
Okay.
we'd have to separate that out and look at each one of those threads and see how that works. And then we thought we were doing it by saying no corporate ownership. And we see now, no, you have to really be much more definitive than that.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
better
there's more
definitions.
to it than that.
So Leslie's here. We can go to her presentation about Provincetown success, or if we won't, maybe, does anybody in the public have any immediate comments that they want to share about the existing bylaw, or can we go to the presentation and come back to this?
I just wanted to bring up something, sorry, that I
Okay.
was thinking about with Scott in mind. And you mentioned it, which is why we don't need to discuss now, but I want to put it in people's mind, is considering maybe registration is a 2-year registration instead of a 1-year registration, because we all know how much is being carried by the health department. And if you can make that registration process in every other year, is that a way to try and be more considerate of town staff workload? Just something for us to consider.
Or at least
further
maybe
down the line.
streamline it so it's some simple, easy process that the homeowner can do the brunt of the work and make it easy for them, like a fire safety inspection or something, and
Yeah.
a self-inspection. I know when I did the self-tour with the Granicus folks, they said they have a service that they could provide where the homeowner logs onto their portal with a cell phone and does like a live walkthrough and just shows that the detectors are working and everything's in order, and they could pretty much do most of the inspections themselves if we had a vendor that could facilitate that. Last thing?
I hope it's the last thing. I'm never going to say that. Charlotte, I just want to be very, very clear. Under my model, the vast, vast majority of existing short-term rentals are going to be allowed. What I think there's a consensus on is, yes, we're going to restrict the investment onlys, but the mom and pop, where they just come down for a couple weeks in the summer, I think we're going to find is for all the rest of them, other than the investment only, they're going to be allowed. So in that sense, it's grandfathering.
Which not everyone's opposed to. So
But I
let's,
just think if we get beyond the words of that term of what we want, I'll bet you find there's a lot more common ground.
okay, maybe we'll call it grandmothering.
What do you want me to say?
I think if you want to come up and join us here, we'll pass you a mic, and then maybe you two can share in between.
I've got some information to share.
Oh, there's a spare mic, Charlotte.
There we go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Leslie. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you
us.
so
My
much.
pleasure. And welcome came from the other side of the Cape.
So I'll introduce you to our group. Liz is a member at large, public.
Hi, nice to meet you.
She's our research specialist and our note taker. Charlotte is a planning board
Nice to
representative.
meet you.
I'm the select board representative.
I know you, Doug, and it's nice to
I
see you
know you
again.
do. And Tom is another member at
Hey.
large.
Hi.
And
Great to meet you.
Lieutenant Jim
Again,
Cummings
thanks.
is the Falmouth Police Department.
How you doing?
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
See Got some extras. This is basically a slideshow that I did that can easily be print in print form. Thank you all for having me tonight. The hope is to be informative for you all and take any questions. So without any ado, let me make sure I've got my pen with me. Oh, I'll go without it. Short-term rentals in Provincetown. Basically what I did is start with a timeline I thought was easiest, just to kind of give you a brief timeline. The first slide is our timeline for regulations. In fall 2022, the select board directed the town manager to contract with UMass Donahue Institute to study the impacts of short-term rentals in town. That was kind of when people were talking about it and wanted us to start looking at it. We decided to go with the UMass Donahue Institute for a study because Nantucket had done a study, and we found that it was very informative, and we wanted to understand whether or not, if you restrict short-term rentals, does it create affordable housing? What kind of, does that work? How should we look at it? And so in January 2023, the study commenced. And then the Board of Health, at the same time in that month, created a new short-term rental fee. We'll go into that detail in a little bit. In April, we had an annual town meeting that had citizens petitions to cap the short-term rentals before the study was completed. They had decided that they weren't going to wait for the study. Fortunately for those of us in the select board, all of those articles failed. And a lot of it was the fact that when town council came to the podium to describe this, when someone asked from the floor, will we be sued on it? He said, it's many lawsuits waiting to happen. So that had them, so basically we were back to waiting for the study. In September 23, the UMass study was presented to the select board. And then we had a fall town meeting because it was really important that we do something. And so we had a fall town meeting, and the articles that we had there were draft that you reviewed were based on the UMass report and the short-term rental registration information from the short-term rental monitoring software and the Board of Health regulations. All those articles passed. So let's go into just a little bit about the Board of Health and compliance software. I know that you're looking at some things, and I heard Granicus, and we had Granicus. We now have a different software for a little less, so maybe that could be helpful to you all too. January 2023, the Board of Health raised the annual fee on short-term rental certificates to $750. The long-term rental certificates remained at $300 for 3 years. So the bottom line is, you used to be able to rent your house, and the certificate you needed was $300 for 3 years. We decided as kind of a way to say, all right, if you really want a short-term rent, we're going to have software. We're going to raise it to $750. And so we created a bifurcated system. Those long-term rentals were prohibited from renting on a short-term basis. So it's basically, if you're going to do short-term rentals, $750. If you're doing long-term, seasonal, something like that, it's $100 a year is what it really came out to. Granicus was our software company. It was contracted to monitor and enforce compliance with the new Board of Health regulation. The reason why we did this, even though we were doing studies, we had to understand our universe. We had no idea how many short-term rentals we had. And when we went to the Department of Revenue, they had a number of like 1,600, but a lot of those, they don't necessarily count. If you're on VBRO and you're on, let's say, Airbnb, those can be double counted. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to figure out what was that number that we were looking at, because the people that were going for the caps, so here we are, we're trying to do the study, we're getting the registration, and then we have citizens groups saying, no, there's 2,000, no, there's 1,600, and it's like these numbers were all over the place, and we were like, we need real data here. So that's why we did it. So Granicus was hired.
Would
And
you
they
comment on the difference between
Yeah.
what you thought it was and what the real data showed?
It's coming in. I've got it in this study, in this slide for you.
Oh, sorry.
So that, no, not a problem. I'm kind of building up to it. Making it dramatic. It's my dramatic reading of this. So the software went and identified properties that were advertised on the online platforms and scrubbed it. And they helped find the properties that were unregistered. The town sent a letter to owners without certificates. In the first year, 53% complied and registered. Now we have 98% compliance, which is great. And I will say, though, there are short-term rentals that are managed by realty offices. Those were all registered because basically the realtors told them that they had to do it. So it was, just wanted you to know that's another subset.
Right.
So in summary, the change in the short-term rental Board of Health regulation and the implementation of a compliance monitoring software led to improved monitoring, increased compliance, and gave us better regulation of the rental properties within town. And all this work, I want to stress, was commenced before we had a short-term rental bylaw regulation passed at town meeting. We thought that information plus the study would help us to do the best short-term regulations that were tailored to the town. So then next, we're going to go to the short-term rental study. So bear with me. UMass Amherst Donahue Institute. These are some of the details that I pulled out for you. If you want a copy of it, I'd be happy to send it to you all. It's 62 pages, and I find it fascinating. You may not. So basically, as a seasonal tourist destination, Provincetown experiences 3 distinct and mutually exclusive demands on its housing stock: year-round residents, vacation homes, and summer workforce housing. The study said the problem is not inventory in our town. In 2021, there were approximately 2,000 households for nearly 5,000 housing units. However, most of these housing units were vacant for seasonal use. They found that the primary driver of local demand for housing is vacation homes. Short-term rentals are a subset of a larger vacation home market, and that's one that they found was still growing. They also looked at the population, and I think we all got hit with this. The town's population grew by 25% in 2020 due to COVID. This increase in the year-round population corresponds with a simultaneous decrease in the number of active short-term rentals. Compared to 2019, the active short-term rentals decreased by about 260 units, or 20%. And that decrease is attributed to people moving to live year-round during COVID, mostly to retire or to work from home. So that's just something to think about. We saw that when people came down, they were living year-round. Those vacation homes became full-time homes, and the short-term rental decreased by 260. So then we looked at, again, what is the pressure that is on our year-round housing crisis? And one of the things to pull out was the year-round housing crisis is in part due to locally employed residents out in the Outer Cape competing with buyers from New York City, Boston, Cambridge, and Washington, D.C. for a limited supply of housing. As you all know, Provincetown is pretty small. We have 30% of the land out there, the town, and 70% of it is with the National Seashore. So it is a small whaling village. But if you come out there, boy, do we find a way to fit houses in there, all shapes and sizes. So in 2023, the median home value was $806,000 for a condo and $2,068,000 for a single family home. So you look at that and you say the median household income needed to purchase a condo, that $806,000 condo, was $218,613. And here's where you show that it's the competing with the buyers from the metropolitan areas in the Northeast. Provincetown's median housing income was $95,850. So there's a real discrepancy there.
Mm-hmm.
This creates a lack of naturally occurring affordable housing. You'll hear that term a lot. That it creates a lack of naturally occurring affordable housing for workers and other long-term residents to purchase. Then they further found evidence that they gathered that suggested that any short-term rental regulation was unlikely to reduce home prices or rents to affordable levels for residents. To give you an example, the median condo price would need to fall as much as 70% to become affordable in 2023. So you see, it's like if you want, the numbers were showing that if you didn't short-term rent anyway, let's say you stopped it, there was no way that people that were making an average of $95,000 a year were going to be able to afford any of the market price condos and houses that were there. The study found that if short-term rent, just gave my second bullet here. Study found that if short-term rentals were restricted and some owners were forced to sell, the property would still be used as a vacation home by a new owner. That means the people that are from Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. And I will tell you, lately, we've also had a lot of people from Los Angeles that have been buying up homes. One man bought 6. He's very popular in town.
I bet.
So if the bottom line is if short-term rental policies and regulations, such as limiting the number of short-term rentals or the number of nights was implemented, they found that it was unlikely to reduce home prices and rents to affordable level for many essential workers. The primary use, again, of homes is not for year-round residents, for rather vacation homes. The market is set by out-of-town buyers, mainly buying homes for seasonal use. We want to let you know right now, the number of second homes we are close to 60% of our housing inventory. There's a part of the west end of Provincetown that once November 1st hits, it's dark. And it's dark until the holidays, and then it's dark again until April. So that's the 60, we kind of joke about it, but it actually is a very sad thing.
I think we're about 50%, aren't we?
Are you?
I'm not sure. Do you think that sounds right?
At least in Falmouth Heights, it's what, 90%.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah.
I think it's 30% townwide.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I happen to live in I'm year round, and I happen to live in a neighborhood that is 50-50. But you can definitely tell when it gets darker, there's less house lights on when I'm walking my dog.
Mm-hmm.
So this study found the research does not support the conclusion that regulating short-term rentals would make housing in Provincetown more accessible and affordable. Short-term regulations also, they found, would not persuade fewer people to buy second homes. They'll still going to buy second homes, force vacation homeowners to sell or to convert their vacation homes to year-round rentals. That's the regulation piece. So the other conclusions is, okay, the regulations aren't going to help you with this. You're still in a crisis. What do? The possible solutions to create year-round housing is to build more and or denser developments for all income levels. And that means 80% AMI and down, which is affordable because you get the state and federal tax credits. But it's also for the missing middle, which is 80% AMI to about 240 AMI. Mm-hmm. So that's affordable housing for all income levels. They also suggested we utilize financial incentives for year-round housing, such as payments, tax abatements, or subsidies to convert short-term rentals to year-round rentals. And they also suggested regional investment in housing and transportation should be considered. I will say, and I noticed that Falmouth, you've done this, and it's great. I saw what you did when you gave the $100,000 to the autistic housing project in Dennis. We've done that, but we also have given money to Truro, to Wellfleet, to Eastham, and they've given it to us when we have been doing affordable housing projects. That's a trend we've been seeing in the last couple of years. So
That's a Cape-wide program.
yeah, no, the dentist program is, we've done that, but then in addition, like we gave, Provincetown passed an article at town meeting that gave, I think, $30,000 to an affordable housing project in Dennis that was going to help build housing for families who have children in the Wellfleet schools. So it's things like that. And then when we're building 65 unit affordable housing complex up in Provincetown, we got money actually from Wellfleet and Truro for it, which was great. So that's a trend when we talk about regional housing, we're already kind of looking at that. We're helping each other. But transportation, that piece, we went to town meeting, we went to a friendly battle with the CCRTA to actually get them to expand their bus service during the peak season. And what we were able to do is we had talked, it was interesting, we had them come to one of our select board meetings, and the head of the CCRTA at the time said, of course we'll do that. We're happy to do that. We'll do that for you. And then the next day when I was the point person and I called with someone else, they said, oh, the staff said we can't do that. We've got contracts we can't open up. We don't have the staffing. So I said, well, that's fine. We're still going to do it though. Because what we needed to have bus service for people that basically, were in the bar closing. We needed expanded service at 5:30, 4:30, 5:30 in the morning so that people could get to their jobs to help with the B&Bs and the hotels that serve breakfast. And that didn't exist. So then we put something on our town meeting warrant. The head of the CCRTA found out about it. He said, why are you doing that? I said, well, you said it was okay, but your staff said we weren't. So we have this problem and we've got to expand transportation. So he found out that happened. So then suddenly they said that they were going to do it and they would create a program. And I said, that's wonderful. I tell you what, we're still going to pass this $100,000 pilot project at town meeting, or hopefully we will. And then if you do that, we won't use the funds. So we had to because basically for us, transportation is housing. We have people that live in Eastham, in Wellfleet, in Truro. And, if they're going to be working for us, because our town goes from 3,600 people year round to 65,000 people in the summer, and we don't have enough housing for everyone. So transportation for us is housing.
So you're more the economic hub in the summer.
Yes.
So people come from other towns. That's why you have this intertown relationship.
A lot of it is that, yeah. Truro, they love us because they come and use all our amenities, and we're happy about that. Then they go home and it's quiet. We've got noise, and you know what? To me, it's 2.5 months of noise that is just basically making sure that our economy is running, our tourist economy is running. So,
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that of the study. Let's go into the article that you have, and again, this is the top lines. It's all, when we went to we had the study, we had the Board of Health rental certificate, and we kind of now knew about how many short-term rentals we had. We had about 890, turned out. So that was fun to see, because everybody thought, oh my God, Provincetown. And we found out that most of the people that had those certificates, not a one was a corporation. They were all people that wanted to retire to Provincetown. So they bought a home and then they short-term rented until they retired. Yeah, so that's a similar. Yeah, so we don't have, I'll share with you, what we have is the corporatization now of our hotels and our larger B&Bs. 35% of our hotels now are owned by corporations. And people are not happy about that, because basically what they've done this summer is they've raised their price per room to between $600 and $800 a night. That that is scary. And so it's actually turned out that short-term rentals are the more affordable option, because they're between $300 and $400 a night. So that's just something too, that beware of the corporatization of your hotels and some of your B&Bs when they go up for sale, because some of them are so expensive. It's a corporation that picks them up. These aren't big corporations. It's not Marriott, but it's Lindquist, Lexvest, the Sawyer Group. So just something to consider. That was a surprise to us. We also passed, anyway, we'll get into that right now. So this is our article. We said all short-term rentals need to be registered with the Board of Health and the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. I think it's similar to yours.
Yeah.
We said all short-term rental operators may register to operate only 2 dwelling units as short-term rentals. Now, we did this because the majority of people had 1, but there were 3% of the operators that owned more than 1. They owned like 2 or 3. So there wasn't a lot of people that owned multiple short-term rentals, which jives with the fact that people are buying a house, they want to retire, and they're renting it until they can retire. We protected existing short-term rentals. That's the grandfathering.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, although I've heard that grandfathering is not the right term to use anymore. So that's why we protected existing short-term rentals. We said that any person or other legal identity holding a short-term rental certificate at the time of the regulations will be able to keep them until the dwelling is either transferred, conveyed, or they don't renew it. But we had the exception, if a property is bequeathed or given to other beneficiary through a will, a new owner may continue to engage in that short-term rental until they transfer it, don't renew it, or it's conveyed. So that's the thing. We just wanted to protect that. We also talked to our legal counsel, and they suggested that we don't take away a right that somebody already had.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the right to short-term rent, that's why we allowed them to come in, because you could get sued.
Mm-hmm.
Very simply, suddenly I can do this and you pass a regulation and I can't do it and it's my property. So we just said, let's just keep it, because we really didn't have a lot of issues with short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the party houses that people talk about. Well, the whole town's a party place, so, but I mean, we didn't have problems. People were renting out their homes as short-term rentals. And so we said, let's just keep it. And so we had that. Then we did say, and we did do this, and what you see in the regulations are, I think, our 3 articles that are condensed into the regulations that you see now. We prohibited, short-term rentals are prohibited in dwelling units owned by a corporation. And what we wanted to make sure is that a lot of people, like my house right now, is my wife and I, but we've got an LLC. So what we wanted to do is wanted to make sure that LLCs, trusts, or S corporations may operate in short-term rental only when every shareholder, partner, or member of the legal entity is a natural person. If you have that, then you have accountability. So we didn't want to restrict, because a lot of people do LLCs for their homes to protect themselves. We thought we didn't want to exclude that. Then we went into the timeshare, fractional, and interval ownership. We said those units are prohibited from engaging in short-term rentals. We had no fractional ownership coming, but we had heard about Picasso and a couple other groups. They do this strictly for commercial use, and we just didn't want to have that happen there. We did carve out an exemption. We said that did not apply to non-commercial groups such as families, partnerships, associations, or trusts with divided interest in real estate and transferred within that specific group. Like a family transfers it within the group. Someone dies, you transfer it down to the next generation, and maybe one group buys it, a sibling buys someone else out. We just wanted to keep that ability for them to keep their home, because that's their family home, And then and that's where it came, is as opposed to sold in fractional commercial interests on the open market. And that's what some of these companies do. We wanted to get ahead of that.
Good.
So, and then finally, the last piece of this is we did not allow short-term rentals in ADUs, and short-term rentals are prohibited in affordable dwelling units and our other income restricted units. For example, housing or rental assistance under local, state, or federal laws or programs. We allowed the Board of Health to promulgate regulations to carry out enforced provisions of this bylaw and set fees for the issuance of a rental certificate for registering short-term rentals, subject to the approval of the Select Board. We haven't had a change. It's only been a couple years, but we haven't had a change in the rental certificates, and the Board of Health hasn't had to do a lot except maybe, make sure that any the short-term rental was up to code, like any building would have to be up to code, just so you know. So it didn't become a big onus on our Board of Health, which I think was nice because we only have one person. Then we had civil penalty not to exceed $5,000 for any violation of the bylaw. We wanted it high to let them know we met business. And then each day a violation continues shall be a separate offense. Now, the aftermath of short-term regulations. Charlotte, to your question. In August, took August 15th. August 15th in 2023, we had 890. In 2024, we had 903. Back this year, we have 890. So that's the universe that we have. People did not, after these rental regulations were passed or before, rush to get them, to these certificates, and rush to do that. It's been a natural, it's kind of stayed about the same number, which was great. Also wanted to let you know that there's some benefits to short-term rentals. As I'm sure you all know, we receive approximately $5 million in annual room tax revenue. That's a combination of short-term rentals and the traditional room tax together. This revenue we've dedicated to housing production, which is housing production, purchasing private property to build housing, and programs to convert seasonal housing to year-round rentals. It's also used for sewer expansion. So those are the two things, but it's predominantly housing. Let me give you an idea of what we've done for housing production. The town has spent $2,250,000 to subsidize the town's portion for the development of 65 affordable and community housing units that are going to open in the spring of 2026. That's 80% AMI and less. Then we had to figure out the missing middle, and I think we're one of the first towns to do this. We had a new police station that was built, the old police station, which had been a funeral home. It's emptied finally, and we're going to raise it. And on that property, we're going to put up 40 market rate condos. 10 of them are going to be market rate, so the developer can get their money back. 30 of them are going to be subsidized by the town up to $4 million, so that 30 of those units will be not only year-round deed restricted, but they will also be below market price. So, for instance, if you are, and it's for home ownership. So if you're make 80% of AMI or less, there are going to be a couple condos that are $200,000. The highest will be for AMI of 240 will be $650,000. So we're going to make sure that we put the subsidy in so that we can keep the prices lower, because there are no state or federal tax subsidies for missing middle housing. So that's going to be, no property taxes are going to be raised in this. That's the beauty of the lodging revenue coming in. The private property acquisition that I talked about, we spent $1,475,000 to purchase a land on 288 Bradford. This property is going to be part housing and part conservation land. We actually had the Conservation Open Space Committee come to us and say, hey, we've got this piece of property, and what we're going to do is we want this amount, half of it can be conservation and it connects to a conservation path. But the other part may be good for housing. Mm-hmm. So we did a partnership with them. And so that was great. Yep. And then we also spent a little over $2 million for 2 adjacent property lots for future housing. We needed to get some private property because we don't have enough empty municipal land to build. So that's what we did. Those two properties right now, we're going to go through visioning sessions with the community of what they want to see there. And then for the housing programs and subsidies, the money that comes in, we pay $600,000 as an annual bond payment for Harbor Hill. This is market rate housing that is 28 units. That it was an old timeshare building that the town purchased in 2018, and so that money that comes in pays the bond, the bond payment every year, the annual one. Then we have a program called Lease to Locals. This subsidizes short-term rental owners so they'll convert to year-round rentals. The idea is you make X amount of dollars for short-term rentals. Let's say you make $40,000 a season. But if you year-round rent, you only make half of that, or $25,000. We say, look, if you go year-round, we'll pay the difference. We're using short-term rent, we're using lodging revenue for that. And basically, what it cost the first year was $528,631. That's how precise it was. But that's what we did from our housing, the room tax revenue. We were able to house 55 people in 33 properties. And the average incentive was $11,000. The average rent was $2,200, and the average household income was for $81,055. So we've done a mix of things. So that's the benefit of the short-term rentals while regulating it. So that's just a quick view of what we did, and thank you for letting me bend your ears on that. And I'm open to any questions you may have.
I'm way back at the dark end at the west end of town.
What?
The dark end at the west end of town.
Mhm.
When those people leave at the end of the summer, and now they're not going to use it, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there used to be a pattern of winter rentals.
Yes.
And the people had to get out for the summer, but at least they were housed for 3/4 of the year. Why did that not happen? Why did it go back?
There are still winter rentals in Provincetown, but there are certain people where it's a price point where they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to work with them, but there is that subsection that we have. And
We used to have a lot more winter rentals in Falmouth. It's kind of a fading thing.
Oh.
It still happens, but it's not like it used to be.
I mean, winter rentals do exist. And actually some of those properties do have a caretaker that's there during the off season, takes care of them. So that could be considered a winter rental, but it is dark there. It's a lot different than the east end of town or the central part of town.
I have another question.
Of course.
Apparently, there was a thought in town that you had 1,600 short-term rentals, but you had only 860.
Yep.
So the state registry is unreliable.
Well, the state registry, I don't want to go that far. The state registry basically is registering tax payments. And so if so basically, I wouldn't say that it's unreliable, but if you have a business, a lot of times, or a house, you'll put it on VRBO. You'll put it on AOL. So both of them take the money and they have to report it into the state. So that's how I think you get some duplication of it. Double counting of the property, but not double counting of the taxes that they're supposed to pay.
So our health agent, Scott McGann, is here. He
Hi,
has a question.
Scott. Does that go?
Can you use a mic? Can we? Sure. Yeah, come on up and grab one of these.
You can steal it from me if you want.
So essentially, we did, in January, we took the tax list. We don't have what do they call that again? Gradient?
Granny.
Gradients, I don't think. So we eventually took the list, the
Yeah.
1,588, and we sent out a reminder, hey, there's a bylaw from back during the Carter administration that you're supposed to be registering your rental. And I think right now we've gone from 300 to around 800 and something,
That's
somewhere in
great.
there.
Yeah.
We're not far off from you. The
No.
last number I pulled was about a month ago, and it was like 760. So we sent out a second notice in the end of July. So I think when I'm done with this, I'm going to go pull the number of what that is. But we did find there was probably 300 or 400 on that list that were no longer doing it.
And
That was the biggest thing was getting a phone call, taking you off the list, so we don't send you another letter.
Exactly.
So a lot of it's information. Some people will say, I sold that house 3 years ago.
Yep.
It's still on the list. Or I haven't done that in 8 years. I'm still on the list. So the list is only as accurate. Right, so a lot of people change and things change. So I think
So it's the state list you're saying?
the state tax list is,
Yeah.
because I'm not using the third party company at this point.
Right.
All we're doing is poor Katie in the office basically took the state's tax list and generated a mailing list.
So what you have is
So you
Yes,
found the same
twice.
thing.
We did it twice.
Wow.
So the state has a list of everyone who's ever been active.
Correct.
But they
So
forget
some
to
people-
deactivate it.
Right. I know somebody at my office did it in 2018, hasn't owned the house since 2020 on the list. So the list is stale. It just gets added to, not deleted from.
But what's really interesting about it is the public perception says the
Yes.
list is undercounting and that the real number
course
is
it-
double what the state
Well,
has. So
well,
it's going just the other way.
Well, and that's someone who's going to say, and that's why we did a study. That we were hearing the investors own all this. They were telling us all, really, it was kind of in a way,
Oh, don't, can you just,
it was a bit of, fear mongering, like, oh, there's much more than you're saying. We can't, and we really said, as Scott has done, and as we did, we got to find the universe. And then once you find the universe, you're like, okay, oh, it's not as bad. And then we had people, the big thing in town is we had people that swore up and down that we just have to get rid of these short-term rentals and affordable housing will come. Listen, if that had been the case, I would have led the charge to get rid of short-term rentals. because we need affordable housing. You know, it didn't, and that has to do with the price point. And that's the thing. So what it told us is we had to build. So what did we do? The same fall meeting that we did the short-term rental regulations and they passed, we were already doing building because we knew we had to do that because we could tell in our town that we were losing people. Yeah.
I think it's just a really interesting point. I'm assuming you're from the enterprise, and people really need to know that that's the way the numbers are going, and maybe you could clarify with Scott what they are and how he got them there and what Provincetown, because people's perception as they've spoken with us is that, yeah, the state says 1,588, but no, it's really like 3,000. So it's an enormous problem. So it's real information to know, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing, we don't know who's not on the state tax list and who's
Yeah,
just doing it.
right.
That's what the scrubbing companies, I call them, the companies that scrub the Airbnbs.
Yeah.
And we're also finding the same thing. There's not a lot of multiple ownership. There's only a handful of people that own more than 3.
That's what we found too.
I went through. I had requested a list from Katie and as of early June, I went through. There were about approximately 600 entries at that point,
Yeah.
and I went through and counted, and there were no people operating more than 2.
Correct. That's what we're finding.
And that's why we got to the 2.
Yeah.
So you're finding the exact same. That's why I was laughing when you were saying that. I said we're finding the same thing.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. We were different. I have to say, I think we're more like, it sounds like, we were different than Nantucket. Nantucket is a lot of investment. A lot of investment purposes. That was a different situation. And that's what we were trying to figure out. You know, it's like, who owns these short-term rentals? And it's your neighbor. You know, it's not Marriott. You know, it's not the Copley Group that was owning a lot of short-term rentals and offering them as luxury rentals in Nantucket. So that's a different market that's there. That's what I've found, at least. And so I hope that, you know, I'm glad to know that we're similar because at least this information will help you.
Yeah. I have a
now-
question. How much did you pay for this study?
I think I'll get to the number, but I think it was between 30 and 40,000.
Yeah. It's
But,
a good investment.
And what we did is we made sure that everybody who was against short-term rentals, I said to them, give me your questions. I wanted everybody who supported it and everyone who didn't support it to put questions in there so that we had a complete study. So someone couldn't say, well, you didn't look at this. You didn't look at that. So that was the thing that I thought was important, is that you want the people you want to make sure that what they're saying you respect, because to me they were residents who had concerns, and then you see whether it was true or not. Yes, sir.
This is great. Thanks so much for coming. So I'm a little confused about the so I'm in your slide that starts 2025 Fall Town Meeting, and there's
Did I-
3 bullets at the end.
You know what? I'm sorry. It's supposed to be 2023.
Oh, okay.
Because
Well,
you know
thank
what?
you.
2025 Halloween. Boy, I must be psychic. You know what? I'll chance that, and that's why I need a pen. Sorry about that. I was.
Well, great. No, that's very
No, and
helpful
thank you
because
for
you
pointing
talked
that
to as if it was done, and I saw the
Yes,
25.
it's not. No, thank you for pointing that out.
It will be done.
Obviously, I must fire my proofreader, which is myself. Thank you for that, Tom. No, it was all happened in a span between 2022 and 2023.
So, as I understand the approach is you're restricting corporations, but there are many, many exceptions like LLCs, you know, your materials are clear. And that obviously will cull out some, but in the second bullet where you say one owner can only operate 2 units. And from your presentation plus the parentheses, it looks like with that provision, you're hardly restricting anyone. And according to what you said, we really have no one who's more than 2. So
We didn't want to restrict people to having one because we didn't think that there was going to be this mad rush. Given
right,
the fact that
and I completely get that.
Yeah.
What's the logic behind protecting existing short-term rentals? So like one specific part of that, are you going to allow existing corporate short-term rentals?
There weren't any. So if there had been existing corporate short-term rentals, we would have banned them, and we would have seen whether or not they sued us. They might very well have.
What about, okay.
So no, we didn't. That's the whole thing. We didn't have to worry about it because when we found out by looking at the software and we got the universe, and then we saw it was people that owned it, not corporations.
Okay, so
Maybe you should let me back
Yeah.
up. Not corporations. That it was people or it was LLCs or family
Sure,
trusts.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all tied to people.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
I-
make sure
I
I'm
get that
specific
part.
on that.
what's the, if the ownership restricted to 2 dwellings really doesn't restrict anyone, what's the purpose then of protecting existing short-term rentals? Because the bylaw itself isn't going to restrict anyone. You have a great, what
Yeah, no,
appears,
it's just double protection.
okay, but
You know,
it's
like
really,
we wanted to make sure that people who had them, they were very concerned that suddenly they were, they couldn't keep doing that. And we're like, look, we're going to protect you. It's fine that you do it. Well, we were looking basically for we were talking about the 1 person, 2 rental certificates.
yeah.
Here's the universe. Now going forward, this is all you can do.
So
You see what I mean? It's a kind of it's a 2-part situation. It's all the people that had them, and it also protected those that had more than 2. We protected everyone, and we were saying so if there's 890 short-term rentals, or let's say there were, I don't know, 500 or whatever, how many there were, we protected those because there was no corporate ownership, there was no fractional ownership. It was people that owned it, but going forward. No one could have more than 2. We thought we'd throw the 2 out there and see if suddenly we'd get more or not, and if we'd have to come back and regulate it. And it turned out we didn't have that happen.
Right, but so it sounds like to me the grandfathering is really more of a just assurance to the people rather than.
It's protecting existing short-term rentals. Yeah.
But once again,
Well, some of the people that were grandfathered, remember, had more.
but it sounds like
It was like
given that
3%.
only 3% own
Yeah.
more than one.
Right. But you didn't. Go ahead.
It
Sorry.
sounds like it's just a tiny number.
It's a tiny number, but we wanted to make sure that they were included in that because our feeling was they didn't do anything wrong, and now we're regulating it. And we're regulating after it already happened. Like what happens with a lot of laws. Something happened, and then you have to regulate it because it's, we thought maybe it was going unchecked or something. But it was basically what we were saying is we're going to protect the short-term rentals that exist. But going forward, if you're going to get one, you can only have 2.
But,
Unless you,
but even a tiny number of lawsuits is not good.
it can stop the whole regulations.
Right. And so I think Mr. Armand had a comment or a
Well,
question.
somewhat,
But yeah,
like-
please, can you come up and use a microphone?
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll be picked up by the camera there.
I might, yeah, give it a shot.
Some of what I was going to ask really, Tom just covered, that it was really saying protected from what?
Right.
And if we're only talking about the 3% of protected of second ownership, well, those are protected. But the only thing that's required to be in compliance and have a short-term rental seems to be needing to register. That's the new requirement, and I presume that even existing units will still have to register.
Oh no, they weren't suddenly they didn't have to not register. They had to register. They had to register annually at the new price of $750, where before they had done it for $300. They didn't differentiate between long-term and short-term. So this is the change. And so with these on January 2023, because the Board of Health can do the regulations before the town passes the general bylaw, they said $750 for a short-term rental certificate. It's going to be annual.
But the existing short-term rentals are still subject to those requirements of registering, paying the increased fee and so on.
Right.
Yeah, and if they have more than one, they have to pay more than $750. They have to pay $750 for each unit that they have.
Okay, and I one question I have, so there are 800 to 900 units you found that are being
Yeah.
used for short-term rentals. what percentage of housing units in Provincetown is that? No, it's how many units are there, how many houses or housing units are there?
I don't have that. I can get that number for you, but if you think about the fact that, what did we say? We had 5,000 household, 5,000 units, I would
Nearly
guess.
5,000
Yeah.
units.
You want to just
8,
try?
9.
What I'm
Yeah.
wondering is whether to compare the figure that so
18%
far
or
we've had
17?
registered in Falmouth with the number registered in Provincetown really tells us what we need to know, or whether the actual percentage of properties being used for short-term rentals is much higher than that would suggest. It's not the same as in Provincetown because we probably have
I think your
23,000?
population is a lot larger than us.
the
Yeah.
number of-
Yeah, 23,000, I think, year
Yeah,
round.
23,000, 3,600. So thank you for doing that. It's 17%.
Yeah.
And that 17% is what's occupied. Well, actually, I should say, I was going to say during the season, but there are some people that do it in February. We found people doing short-term rentals in February
Oh, yeah.
because they don't like all the people in Provincetown this time of year.
And then one of the things you pointed out is that short-term rentals are not allowed in an ADU.
That's right.
And of course, that's stated in the state legislation passed last November.
Correct, but this was passed before the state legislation.
But thinking about moving forward in Falmouth, that's, while it's state law, it isn't stated in that draft of the
Mhm.
bylaw, and it's
Right.
really important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
If people think they can have a second dwelling unit on their property
Mhm.
and can rent it, but they can't.
Well, actually,
It is stated in the accessory apartment bylaw, but you're right, it should be in here too.
hey, why not do the double? That way, depending on what you look at, you may only are looking at this and not,
Yeah, it
Doesn't
should,
hurt.
it should be made clear.
because what they said in the ADU regulations that a town may prohibit short-term rentals. And so not that towns need to prohibit short-term rentals. We were a town that we didn't want it. So I think you're smart to do it in both. Why not?
Mhm. Anybody else have questions? Yes?
I
Liz,
sorry.
and then I'll go.
Hi. So, Leslie, I actually am also on the Affordable Housing Committee, and I just presented last week about incentivizing year-round rentals, and talked about lease to locals in Provincetown and Nantucket, and then the new markets that are opening. There's in Chilmark, and then now Eastham and Truro are working together.
No, actually, it's Eastham and Orleans.
Oh, sorry,
Because they're
Eastham
right
and
next to each
Orleans.
other.
That's right. I
And
want
so-
it to be Eastham and Truro for some reason in my head, but it's
That's
Eastham and
okay.
Orleans.
Well, we're going to talk to Truro, so we'll make it. And no, they decided to do together because of the cost.
Right, because they were. My understanding is they're sharing the administrative
Yes,
burden
yes.
by partnering together.
Exactly.
And I'm just wanted to get your thoughts. It seems like that program's been quite successful. It's
Thankfully, yeah.
helping you bridge until some new construction's coming online.
Exactly.
When I think about the time and energy of town staff and volunteers, do you feel that the energy spent in doing a restriction, was that energy as well spent as incentivizing?
I don't know the restriction. Are you thinking
Like
year-round
the
deed
regular,
restriction?
like
The
getting
year-round deed restriction?
getting like a short-term rental bylaw
Oh.
through town meeting takes time and energy,
It was, yeah.
and also getting an incentive program off the ground takes time and energy. And which one of those do you think was more effective?
I'll tell you what's easier. I think they've been both effective, if I may. Lease to locals was easier because they have a group called Placemate. So
Right.
basically, the reason why we spent the amount of money we spent is that a portion of that, and I don't have the differential, I can get that to you, was the fact that Placemate is the group that goes out there and they find the landlords and they do all the background work.
Right.
They do a lot of the administrative parts. So it was really nice to have that. And they did a great job with it. They also figured out the rents and the incentives and things like that. I'd like to also add with lease to locals, we added something to make it even more, really, we wanted to further incentivize. We have a residential tax exemption in our town, and it's at 35% for people that are residents. We allowed anyone that rented to a year-round person, they were allowed on that property to have also a residential tax exemption on top of that.
Right.
So not only did they get the subsidy, but they got a year-round, they got a residential tax exemption up to 35% of their property. So that's the kind of thing that we wanted to make sure happened too. So I think Attorney, I mean, doing regulations, the regulation part of it got better when we had the study and we had our universe. That took time, and in the meantime, people wanted something done, and so that's why we ended up with citizens petitions. They're like, "You're not moving fast enough," and we said, so they did that. So that was a difficulty because we had to play defense on that, but that's part of government. They have the right to do it, and it's like, and so we then had to counter it and and hope that it didn't pass. And then once the study came, really, we started in January, and by October we had it. So,
Do you have any sense of how many years you envision continuing with that kind of incentive program?
with lease to locals,
Yeah.
that's a really good question. We also did a housing needs assessment, and we found out that we needed, I think, an additional 200 to 250 units is what we're doing beyond what we're already building. So for us, we see this as a stopgap measure, and what we're wondering is that, and this is what we want to see, is in the spring we're going to have these 65 units open at the VFW. So they're going to be a couple market rate, but predominantly it's 80% AMI and less. So we want to know how many people and you can do what? You can have set up to 70% when you have new construction.
Local preference.
You get the local preference. We want to see how many people that we can basically transfer into that new project. And then we have to take a see, okay, who else is still there? Who else still needs it? So that's the thing that I think right now, we had a select board meeting where the town manager and said, now we're going to do 75% of the subsidy. And some people came in and said, please don't do that. And the select board said, you know what, we're going to keep it at 100%. So we kept it at 100%, but we were able to have enough money to start another cohort. So I think I've got it here. Let's see. We, in year 2, we allocated $634,000 for year 2 from the housing fund, which allows a new cohort of participants. I will say, we said to do 100%, but they actually went and asked the people that had done it, would 75% be okay? And a fair amount of them said 75 would be fine because they were getting the residential tax incentive. So I want to just put that little asterisk in there. So basically, we were able to get 17 new year-round residents across 13 properties. Okay. So had an additional. So if you look at that, we have 68 people. And so you kind of have to look at it as that you
one
start
or the other. You need the one to fund the other.
Yeah, I mean, if we build enough housing so that we don't need it, that's wonderful. But until we do, we're going to try to find a way to incentivize people. What we did get blowback, and it's understandable, and we're trying to figure out what to do about this, is that the people that had been already renting year-round to people and gave them affordable prices, they said, hey, we've always been doing the right thing. How about we don't, why didn't we get something?
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out what we can do to make it fair, because they make a really good point. But
tax deduction, maybe?
that was part of it. We found out, actually, that a lot of people didn't know about the residential tax exemption. And once they found that, some people went away. But we also have to look, is there some way we can do something to help because they're doing the right thing and they're helping people stay year-round.
And prevent them from changing their mind and going to the short-term rental.
That's right. That's exactly it. So that's what's part of it. So did that help you? And if you have further questions, Doug knows how to get a hold of me. I'm happy to help out, connect you to our town manager who's done it, connect you guys to placemates. You can talk about it. And that's the beauty. I mean, the thing is that if you're, our thought was, if we're going to have short-term rentals, and we might as well use that money to make sure that we're building housing for the people who live and work in Provincetown, because that seemed like it was just the right thing to do.
I like it. The whole thing, great program.
Well, it's an impressive program. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And, you guys are doing the hard work. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's good to have regulations and have guardrails on. And for us, our guardrails were really because we wanted to make sure, not that what we had was bad, but that we were trying to make sure that we were, making sure we put guardrails on so it didn't go down to corporate ownership. So we didn't have fractional ownership, fractional ownership. So we didn't have somebody say, I'm going to get 5 short-term rental certificates. So we were at a place in time where we said, this is what we have. We want to protect what we have, and then we want to make sure that we're regulating it going forward. So
Leslie, do you remember the amount of time that was required to do the study?
the study, we started in January and we got it in September. So it was about 7 months.
One season.
And we can give you the Rod's number if you want that.
Yeah.
He did a good job. He was doing some other studies too. I know that right now Yarmouth is using them. They asked us for that information and they're doing it. It really helped us get a lot of clarity around what was needed in our town. And so that's something. But I mean, they may not have such a, I think they were also doing another Nantucket study.
Yeah.
Poor Nantucket. So, but I'm happy to find that out. Maybe they can do it on a, because you already have the universe, thanks to Scott. Or
Well, he's getting there, but
no, that's congratulations. That's
he
wonderful.
does that on his spare time.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Scott.
I used to ask and she did it. So it was not, no heavy lifting on my end.
But good for you for taking that initiative. So anyway, thank you very much, all the committee members, for letting me, come here and share my story. And I just wish the best for you all in what you're doing.
I
and
appreciate your
time
help
and
with
effort.
this because it's been very informative.
Yes.
I'm around if you need me. Feel free to reach out again, or I can also give you people in our town that you want to talk to. It doesn't just have to be me. So
I'm sure I'll be sending you emails with questions and asking for help.
wonderful. I look forward to it.
I would say Mackenzie Perry is amazingly helpful.
Thank you. We happen to think so too.
Their
Isn't
housing
she wonderful?
coordinator
Oh,
is really terrific. And
She's the one that brought Lease to Locals to us. So,
Okay.
she's really,
yeah,
she's
she's
good.
been
We
very
got a pretty good one too.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's good. Aren't we all lucky?
Yeah.
It's
We are.
wonderful. Thank you all for your time
Thank
tonight.
you, Leslie. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Leslie.
Before you go, did anybody in the audience have the last question for Leslie before she goes? There's
Yes.
one.
Oh,
I'm Dave Garrison. I chair the Affordable Housing Committee for the town.
hi, Dave.
Every time I hear your presentation, I'm more and more impressed with what you're doing here. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
One point I would observe here is that it sounds from your presentation that you had in mind from the get-go to address the long-term rental challenge in your town. The short-term rental exercise, from your description, was part and parcel of an effort to deal with the long-term rental problem. You were trying to, as you say, you're trying to house folks that work in your town. So
Yes, yes.
I'm concerned, and this group has heard me before, the brief for this special committee doesn't include that objective. And so I encourage the committee members to think about that. That would expand your mission to go beyond just regulating short-term rentals, also look at how you can incentivize units to move to the long-term rental side. I still think that's and I get that sense from your presentation that you had that in mind from the start.
We
Well-
did, and that was it. And I think you can have your regulatory article that you're doing and maybe an additional article that basically says this is where the money's going and make sure that it's going to affordable housing.
Yeah.
That's helpful, and make sure that it's going to incentivize. Because we have this, and I didn't get into it, but we had this complicated, and it was the select board that said it. It's like when the money comes in, we had already had, our town had passed what to do with traditional room tax. They had buckets, they had tourism, they had the general fund, they had sewer enterprise fund, they had capital stabilization, and we created another bucket for housing.
Yeah.
So that, and then we were able to say, we were able to distribute it through that. So maybe that's
It's really
part of it. Would that make sense? If as long as you're directing the money to go to housing, I think.
I think it's more of a bigger picture issue, Dave, because it's a select board initiative to do the lease to locals. I don't think that's part of this committee's purview exactly. I hear you, though. It certainly is part of the bigger picture. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this whole thing was more of a select board initiative, wasn't it?
It became a select board initiative, but what I will say is I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, since they're looking at you for guidance, to ask them to really think about when the money comes in, that it's incentivized for affordable housing.
Well,
I think, you're doing it in an article. I'm not trying to, not trying to get into your businesses.
I would love to see our committee recommend such a move. When we first started taking in the short-term rental money, my position was that all of it should go to affordable housing, but there was a thought by town management that new revenue should be shared equally between the town and the school. So half of it goes to the school, and that wasn't my first thought, but I didn't argue the logic because I think there's sort of an understanding there that when there's new revenue, you have to share it.
Well, and I will say that I don't know that our school system's pretty small.
Yeah.
I think we've got so we've got one. We don't have a high school, and we've got pre-K to 8th grade. But so I don't want to comment on other than to say we have found the benefit of putting it toward housing is helping to reduce the pressure that we have felt for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say affordable housing, absolutely. I'd also say don't forget the missing middle.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, and
Yeah.
again, it also
Yeah.
depends. I mean, in Provincetown, the missing middle are our teachers, our firefighters, our police, our municipal staff,
Same here.
and also our healthcare, our rural healthcare workers. We have Outer Cape Health. Thankfully, through Lisa Locals, we actually have some nurses and some doctors that are staying in houses. So I think that, Dave, to your point, I think it's important that that's not lost in this. And because now that you're going to be able to capture revenue, you're going to have a pool that that you're going to get every year.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll go be dedicated as much as you're able to. But in what you do with your school, I think you've got a much bigger system.
Our school is half our town budget.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I hope
All
that
right,
helps,
great.
Dave. Yeah.
That's a good point, though. Thank you for
You're
making that.
Again, thank you all.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Leslie.
it.
Thank you.
Drive safely. It's probably
Safe
still raining, right?
Okay. I'm going to go get something to eat in your wonderful restaurant.
Okay. Good idea.
Thank you all.
Okay. So we were talking about our own bylaw. I think we pretty much got through it, but does anybody want to go back to it again? Did Mr. Ahmed?
Well, my thinking about all this has definitely been affected by the presentation just made. Because I've been very concerned, without having the statistics, that short-term rentals is a real problem that relates to the availability of affordable housing. And we've just been told that prohibiting short-term rentals isn't going to make it much of a difference.
Right.
It's pretty important information.
It is.
I had some comments about the draft, but I need to rethink some of that. I do think that Tom Crane's and other comments about the use of the property as opposed to the type of ownership is really apt.
Mhm.
And a couple of you have said that protecting investment is not investment only property is not a goal here. And we refer a couple times in the draft of home ownership. Well, home ownership, of course, implies residents, people who live there.
Mhm.
And that consistent with the idea of not protecting investment property only, is that the person who doesn't live some portion of the year in the property, I guess, doesn't own it as a homeowner. They own it as an investor. Now, how do you deal with the person who buys for future, to live there in the future? The person described as buying a home to use for retirement at some point, maybe spending a couple of weeks there in the summer.
I don't think we've really excluded that yet. I think there was discussion about that, but I don't think that necessarily has to be in here because we've had other examples of people owning homes and using them exclusively for that, but it's just an individual who owns a home. And as stated by Leslie, people might be buying a home to retire later. So I don't think we should exclude that exclusively. And I didn't think that we were, honestly.
No, I don't think, I think the question is our, a couple of you, as I just said, have, said this isn't to protect investors. And the question in my mind has been whether there should be some home occupancy required, some owner occupancy required.
Yeah.
That the person who lives there but needs to rent the house some in the summer to make it work. You know, is that different than the person who never sleeps there? Or is there only for 2 weeks of the year and then is renting it out the rest of the year? I don't think somebody who owns a property who doesn't live there but rents it year round to somebody, there'd have to be an exception for that.
But that's not short-term rental.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, but yeah, that's right.
We just wouldn't fit in the reg.
But I do know at a
Well,
particular.
what I don't want is somebody to rent property for 9 months, kick out tenants, and then use it all summer for short-term rentals.
Definitely right.
Right, agree,
Well,
yeah.
what prevents that?
Yeah.
Well, I think
Unless
they,
there's a home occupancy
That's an
requirement,
interesting point.
which we have had bylaws which require that. Our accessory apartment bylaw used to require occupant home ownership for owner occupancy for 7 months.
And I think it was restricted to the 7 months just because of the pattern of people being there for the winter or the summer and leaving. But other towns have definitely limited, recognized that owner-occupied homes shouldn't have a limit on the number of times that they are able to make a short-term rental. But those that are not owner-occupied should.
That is a really interesting point about the winter rental and the short term. That's probably bad business. We have to think about that one. Yes, sir. Yes. And just introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Joe LeMay, I'm on the Finance Committee, but I'm not here as a Finance Committee representative, just a normal citizen. I have several friends who rent out their home, which they live in, for only a few weekends a year, like road race weekends, that kind of thing. So they're in a super subcategory to a short-term rental. They're not short-term rental people.
Right.
The Leslie from Provincetown said $750 to have a permit to do short-term rentals would kill these people.
I think they're so short that they might not even be. Yeah.
No, it's more than 14 days. 3-4 weekends, that's 16, 20 days a year. So they're not short-term rental people. They're just making their house available on the crowded weekends, mostly, or when they themselves go on vacation. So they fall above the 14 days, but below a real short-term rental. And for them, any kind of large fee to do their registration would be very onerous. So there should be something in there that if they're renting out less than 30 days a year, the fee's like smaller. If we're going to put a big fee on.
Okay.
Or maybe we just put a small fee on everybody and be happy with that. But so I look at what they do. They're not raking in the cash. They're just making a little bit of money on when they're not there on the roadways weekend. They leave town. They rent it out to people who are, teams who are coming down to, watch their person run. So that kind of thing should be built in that, pick a number, 30. If you're renting out for less than 30 days a year, you don't have to pay the big fee. That would help these guys.
Maybe half price or something. And we don't know that we're headed for the 750, but we still have to talk. That'll be later.
There will be a fee, I'm sure, and whatever it is would be, a significant percentage of what they do collect. Where someone who's short-term renting for $60,000 a year, they don't mind a $750 fee, but
Right.
yeah. The other one is I'm really liability averse. I would never do a short-term rental under just an LLC. That's not enough protection for me. I would have the LLC owned by an S corp to get an extra step away from liability. Too many lawyers with the big billboards, call 1-888-888. Too many shark lawyers out there who might just break through the LLC and come after my personal assets, which we, the Airbnb.
Well, folks like that will have to consider their own family trust. I mean, because we really just found out from Lieutenant Cummings that a corporation that's not a natural person is not really accountable. Can't take them to
You
court.
sue state court. Yeah. You're registered with the state attorney general. They know where you are. The other one is if somebody does own a house and they live far away, I'd like to see some sort of requirement for a local representative, perhaps a real estate office. So I live in Arizona. I have a house in Cape Cod. I spend a couple months a year here. I'm just making it up. I don't live in Arizona. But I should be required to have a local agent. And a real estate agent would probably love to do this for a small fee. So when the police department wants to call the person who's in charge of a given building, they know that the registered person is, Compass Realty, something like that. So a requirement like that might help to have a local person who's responsible to make quick decisions while the owner is getting, contact.
We do have that in here. There's going to be a responsible person who's going to be responsible 24 hours a day. So if the owner's in Arizona, they better find somebody here.
Okay, but it would be 24 hours a day. I mean, you call a real estate person at 2 a.m. They get there.
Property management companies.
Property
maybe,
management
yeah.
company.
And these online platforms have owners' representatives now that often manage the property for the owner when they're out of state. So someone like that could also do the job. But yeah, it's 24 hours because problems don't happen at 2 in the afternoon. They happen at 2 in the morning.
Yes,
Right.
that's when it happens. But even if someone was like living in Brockton, you try to call them at 2 a.m. would do any good.
Well, that could jeopardize their permit or their license, whatever we come up with, their ability to use the rental. They better answer the phone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, Tom. Oh, sorry.
She stole a pen.
I was gonna just let it go. Could go live in
You
Provincetown.
could just swing by
It
P-Town
could go.
and pick
I'll
it
go
up.
by. Go visit it.
Anytime.
Okay, sorry.
One thing I think would be good, and this goes a little to what Bob said. I'm curious, Scott. I'm going to email Katie and get an updated list of registrants to see, do we have how many?
Do we think we?
Do we think we have? How many does any individual operate? Is it mostly one? Is it some twos? Are there any threes?
Right.
And then what types of individuals are associated? I remember from when I was looking back in June that a lot of them were held in trusts, family trusts. But I think it would be good, we don't have the Granicus level data, but from the data that we do have,
What's our best guess?
What's our best guess? And I would be happy to have a look through that before the next meeting. So we have some hard numbers to think about and decide, because that's going to be an important question. I think.
Certainly. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
700.
Thanks, Leslie.
787. Okay.
That is really what your best guess right now, huh?
Oh, it
787?
was. It just went down.
Wow.
787 applicants as of January 1st.
That is really interesting. I thought it was so much higher. It's
Well,
great.
some people are for it. I mean, we're not, see, this is, I hope you can hear me. We just sent out a couple of notices. We're not gonna go through enforcement, so you didn't fail until we spawned and all that.
Right.
Because I don't have staff for that. We
Got
don't
it.
have time to just sort of grind on that. It was just to see how many people would respond to a simple letter and a second one.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we've gone from 300 to 700, let's say 800.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gained 500. And if we didn't gain any of those would be long-term, because we didn't notify long-term rentals, we just notified those on short-term.
Got it.
So we just gained, I don't know what percentage of the total. Right, so we had several hundred people call us and say, I don't do that anymore. And so you took them off the list. So the one thing to ask Katie is how many people are off the list?
That's good.
And
Okay.
request us to off the list, because that's not relative, that lowers the 1,588 that we had on the original list.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're gonna have people that are just not gonna respond. And so-
Right.
Peter
Yes,
Johnson
Cheryl?
Staub actually told us at our last meeting, it was a different number. I've forgotten the number he gave us, but my memory was it was 300 or something from the first response, and now it's the, 760. So I'm wondering if you're planning to send out another mailing.
He did.
Too late, I just did 3 weeks ago. It's really late to send anything out now because the summer rental people are either registered, like summer rental season's over.
Right.
Its purpose is about 2 more weeks. We sent the letter out in August, late July. We just sent that out a couple weeks ago.
No, I didn't mean immediately or for this year. Is this, I didn't mean immediately for this year. Is it a plan then in your office now that you would be sort of polling those people annually or trying to,
All right, so now that they're in the system, and then now they have a permit on permanized, they'll be automatically notified. We don't have to send a letter anymore. For those people that registered, they'll say, hey, by the way, we'll click on a button, makes things a lot easier, and say that your permanized account that shows that you have not registered for 2026. So once we've captioned them. Now, if they don't do it, we'll have to ask them why they haven't done it, and it's because people will still drop off the list. But by not too much heavy lifting, it took a couple weeks to get those letters out, right? You know, off and on while she's answering calls and so forth. We gained some percentage. I don't know what the percentage of what. I don't know what the final number of people
Right.
actually. I think there's a fair amount of people that weren't on the 1,588 list on the tax list, I'm sure. So I'm not concerned.
Well, thank you for continuing to work
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, thank you,
yeah,
Scott.
thank
Yeah,
you.
we're
Yes,
still
Tom.
looking at a company. I think we'll go with a company eventually, and that might get. It would be probably kind of funny by doing the simple things to gain 600 and only pay a company that only gets 310. Well, you know, like, oh boy, we just spend an extra, $80,000 to gain 310 people, but that might be what happens.
Right.
Well, and sort of in the same vein, for Falmouth to now consider hiring Donahue Associates to do a study for us that basically will replicate the study in Provincetown. It's going to yield very similar information. You wonder if it's a good use of money.
Or time.
Yes, Tom?
I just wanted to respond to Bob. I do have a lot of drafting experience, and in my thinking of drafting, yes, I absolutely had thought the way to draft and restrict investment-only property is through residency requirement. I was thinking, but this don't hold me to is like, aren't residing in a week. That's a number we can play with, but, I don't know of any other way. If you want to share with the committee any other thoughts of how to focus on that investment only, other than a residency requirement, love to hear from you.
I think it essentially takes care of the corporate issue and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, goes directly to use of the property, to ownership. But I don't think that I don't know if the committee would even consider a requirement that half the year that the owner or family member has to live there.
I think we'd get a lot of pushback
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
No,
and
no.
lawsuits.
Yeah.
Yes, Jim?
Just two things. First, going back to the numbers that we're getting, I think while Leslie didn't say it, the sense I got is one of the reasons that they protected existing short-term rentals was to provide that carrot for people. If you're paying the fee, if you're on the register, Provincetown did it. Is Falmouth going to do it? Are they going to protect you if you step up and volunteer to pay the fee? You might have some protection from the regulation when it comes forward. So we kind of incentivize that self-registration.
Yeah.
The other thing, as far as the residency, I don't disagree with the concept, but it is a completely unenforceable regulation for us to do. If you look at a town regulation that we have right now that does the reverse, the mooring regulations, you can let somebody borrow your mooring for 10 days. The only way that you would ever get a citation for having somebody on your mooring for more than 10 days is if somebody next to you took pictures for 11 days in a row that were dated and sent them to the harbor master. There is no way that a town department and the harbor master's office in the summer season has more people than the health department, and certainly more people than the police department could dedicate to do it, to measure, and everybody will say, yeah, I stayed there from this week to this week. There's no way for us to say, yeah, somebody was occupying that for this period of time, 10 days, 20 days, whatever it is, in order to comply with the regulation.
And I feel like honestly
point.
that we also likely won't be successful at town meeting if
If it's like a 6-month thing.
trying to
then,
make it
yeah.
something that's so difficult.
Right.
And that's why I think regulating the other side of it, trying to go towards the ownership side of it is just simpler in terms of how we manage the regulations.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, and our purpose here isn't to make things more difficult for the people who are already involved in this practice. It's really, at the outset, we could see this, what we were calling corporate ownership, however you want to look at that, to prevent that practice from spreading here. So what's here, we're living with it, it's okay. We see it coming because it's come to many other places.
Yeah, and I think Leslie had some really great points about aspects of corporate ownership that I never considered. This, kind of what they were trying to get ahead of, and the fractional ownership that they were trying to, because they saw these trends that were happening that I never really considered. I looked at it a little differently, but the way she described them, I would certainly be concerned about those types of, essentially becoming a short-term rental timeshare as a fractional ownership.
And my concern, which seems to be unfounded, but maybe it's a concern about what might happen in the future, was that some corporation would come along and say, hey, let's go down and buy up a bunch of houses on the Cape and create a chain of short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So far, I guess that's not really happening, but
I think like in the Provincetown example, corporate hotels are getting $800 a night, and their average price for an Airbnb is $400. I think there's a huge opportunity for a corporation, if they did not have that regulation, to come in, buy up a bunch of short-term rentals, charge $500 a night because they set the price at that point.
We know
And-
homeowners
and it's-
now are getting postcards saying, I'm very interested in buying homes in your neighborhood. The postcard that I was given said, as an example, said, I'm looking to buy 3 houses as an investment. Are you interested in selling your house? So it's definitely out there.
Yep.
And it's better to just stop it now.
but
I think that the corporate purchases of houses is already, for this purpose, is already going on.
okay.
I did have a question about commercial events, the language that's in the bylaw. But I don't understand it correctly. If I own a house or I live there because I'm a long-term tenant, and I want to have a luncheon or a party or a wedding for a family member or a friend, of course I can do that. Trying to understand if this is prohibiting that from happening. I rent a property, a short-term rental for a week. Can I have a wedding on it?
Nope. Not in what we've drafted.
Because the language refers to other gatherings for direct or indirect compensation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand whether that's only prohibiting functions where people are paying to get in.
Okay, I
think that language-
thought the language was to prohibit events in general from using the property as a place as
As a venue.
a venue, right?
Well, then maybe there should be a period after the word gatherings as opposed to after the for direct or indirect compensation.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I
If
agree with.
that's the
I
intent.
agree with Bob on that.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Yes. Tom?
So, 2 points. I really have just enormous confidence that if people want to come in for an investment only strategy and we say no corporations, they'll do it through a trust. They'll do it through an LLC. Bob's nodding his head. The loopholes are endless by doing it through the type of ownership. As far as enforceability, you know, I understand what you're talking about to some extent. You know, at least as I have always approached regulations that I've written, is as a general matter, you have to look at the goodwill of the people. And if they're people who are deliberately,
Exactly.
you know, misreporting, they're in violation. And they're in violation daily. And that's a stiff penalty of a daily violation. You add that up, 5,000 times 365, absolutely higher math for me. But I just don't believe that a certification that of people who put in there, say that if we do a residency requirement and people in the registration certify to that of course there are always going to be some non-compliance. That's, you know, unfortunately true in any regulation. But I think the hopeless non-compliance you're talking about, I don't agree with that at all.
I think that the incentive to do it would be too great.
But the penalty incentive
But
is
the penalty isn't going to ever be that.
Well-
We can send them the bill and then they appeal it. We go to district court. They get a $500 fine. So they don't do it anymore. And then we lost out on all that, which would be the reality of the situation.
I don't agree with that.
I'm in district court all the time. I'm just telling you what the reality of the situation is.
Okay. That's
Bob, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to just
Sorry.
ask you to think about what could happen, in theory at least. This bylaw, well, state courts have said that short-term rentals are not a residential use, they're business use. And a town can allow them permissively by its permissive bylaw. What we're doing is creating a permissive bylaw that will allow a use that has been not lawful to become lawful. We're drafting, you're drafting, town meeting is going to be asked perhaps to pass a bylaw that will allow 90% to 100% of the housing units in Falmouth Heights or Woods Hole or anywhere in Falmouth to be used as short-term rentals. And let's say it's only 50% or 60%. How's that going to affect those residential neighborhoods? And do we want that result? Do we want a bylaw that allows that potential result? I guess you could say, well, we can always change the bylaw in the future when it's gotten to be too many. If we can get a 2/3 vote of town meeting to go back after more than half of the units or houses are being used that way. Just want people to understand what we're doing.
So you're suggesting either a cap of a percentage or a cap of a number?
Well, I mean, that's tough too for various reasons. We have a bylaw, a zoning bylaw now that allows home-based businesses, but says that you need a special permit and the Board of Appeals has to take into account the number of other home-based businesses in a neighborhood. We have precedent for these different types of things. But I'm just saying, what are you allowing by making this permissive? And without a special permit. Now, one possibility is to grandfather existing units simply by registration. That's responding to the political problem that there are so many of these units. But maybe for more, require a special permit. And we have grandfathering provisions in our bylaws that allow stuff that's no longer allowed to be, to continue. Undersized lots, couldn't build on today, except that they're old, so they're grandfathered. This isn't the first time we've tried to protect existing uses, but said no more.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this question of if if this is a problem, and maybe it isn't a problem yet, but you're creating a bylaw where it maybe will be a problem. And we have grandfather. We have to come up with a better word than grandfather with the association of the South, but it's hard to get to figure out what that is. Okay. Should this protection be forever? And there was a little discussion tonight about the use passing to other generations, to family and so on. But in Provincetown, I couldn't understand exactly what you were saying, something about selling property outside family had some consequences, although it wasn't, I don't understand what the consequences are. Does this grandfathering, if we want to limit short-term rentals, which this bylaw doesn't do at all, won't do at all.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to say, yeah, you can keep doing this, but when you sell the property, the next owner isn't protected. Got to get a special permit. Of course, there's been no. I know the problem is special permits require a lot of effort by the town.
It's a good concept, but then the practical application becomes difficult because who's going to do it? The ZBA is overloaded. They work every week. Planning board, it's not exactly their purview. That's why we were thinking about this general bylaw. And I understand your point. There should be some way to maybe have a review or some sort of out for us if it's not working. I think
We
I
could
get
put
what
it in
you're
front of the new
saying.
licensing board.
Yeah, we'll just toss it to them.
Nobody to complain yet, right?
Okay, well, we're a little past our time. I thought we were going to stay at 2 hours, but it's been a great conversation. Are we ready to move to
Could I
next?
just respond to what Bob has suggested?
Yes, please.
Other communities have come to grips with this. And where they've done something that's on record, it appears that what they're doing is capping a number. And how exactly they're knowing how to enforce that isn't explained in what I've read. But they realize that that is the problem, that they've got a situation that has been sort of extra legal but going on, a practice, and they don't want any more of it.
Well,
I think a solution may be grandfather what's there, make people register, do all that side of this regulation, but say if there's a new one, you do need a special permit.
Then we'd have a rush to
Okay, so
register.
Bob, go forward for just a sec. A special permit,
I said then we would have a rush to register. Everyone would want to register.
Well, one of the grandfathering provisions might be you have to prove that you've actually done this for the last couple of years by submitting a accountant statement or a copy of the tax return or something showing you've reported the income.
That
there are
might
going to
be
be
something.
administrative issues in whatever we do. So Bob, who do you think would actually, what body would hear the appeal to get the special permit?
Well, right now, if it's really a special permit, of course, it's Board of Appeals, whether there can be some licensing thing that has, I don't know, I think it's a.
Maybe it's not a
I think
special
we're
permit. Maybe it's a.
Controlling land use, we maybe are trying to limit the number of units. We're trying to protect neighborhoods. Well, maybe it has to be the zoning board of appeals.
Maybe it's just a
Maybe
revocable
enough.
license
It's a revocable if you violate.
or revocable. I don't know exactly, but I'm just trying to keep it as a general bylaw that we can do with a more simple process. But I don't really know what I'm talking about with a revocable revocable license. I don't know.
Well, you could make it so that, well, and the first time I ever talked to Jeff about it, his response was require a special permit. Just the numbers that can wield it. It was right, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like the numbers aren't what we thought they were,
Yeah.
for one thing. It's all been damped down tonight by the experience and numbers coming out of Provincetown. The numbers aren't as fearsome.
But how many new ones do we have a year?
We don't know what would
That might
happen.
be misleading, because you have to have a total number of homes in P-Town in Provincetown.
Well, the total number of homes that our own housing production plan put out was, I think, 21,000, not 23, but we
yes.
know
But Provincetown's only got 5,000.
5,000.
So, okay, so that's 20%. Almost
It was 17% there,
17%.
based on their
Right.
numbers.
17% of 22,000.
Right, and it's just a little over 3% here.
18, 17 or 18, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, but it's only 3% here.
Right, as far as we know.
yeah,
But-
I don't think we have as high a percent of short-term rentals. that we would.
You know, if my neighbor wants to have a 3-car garage over 900 square feet, they need to go get a special permit.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a neighbor, fortunately not right next door, 2 doors away, who's never, there's no owner living there. And it's rented every week to people but they don't require a special permit.
Mm-hmm.
Something's not right here.
Okay.
And I
Ted,
know we
what's your
talked
thought
about
on
the,
that? Just, you can have the last word here.
I reserve my comments.
Smart man.
I think we talked about the disadvantages of doing a study like Provincetown did, but in doing their study, they got a really good sense from their stock of housing what homeowners were doing with their properties, what their desires were.
Right.
And that really gave them kind of a target. Like, this isn't a problem that's, unless circumstances dramatically change in Provincetown, this isn't going to be a problem that's going to expand. And that's why I think they don't have a cap in theirs.
Yeah, and I think they said, let's just focus on the revenue and the
Yeah.
positive path forward,
Yeah.
and it seems to be working, but Falmouth is a much bigger town. And
That
so
might
we
not have the
could-
same sentiments. Yeah.
We might have a bigger problem if we let it go too fast, too
Yeah.
far.
Okay, so say the predictions about a recession are true.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to have a recession. And each time we've had a recession, as long as I've been, so this is since 1991, paying attention to real estate in Falmouth, each time for sale signs go up all over.
Right.
People getting rid of their second homes, they're not going to carry that anymore. That's a perfect time for some corporation or equal to come in and buy up a bunch of them. So we're looking at, wait, we might have a situation here where we need to protect the housing that we've got from falling into those hands because it's going to be cheaper and more available soon.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Okay.
Because right now, what protects us is no one can afford it.
And it's not 100% guaranteed that it's going to be legal forever. So it's not really a great investment because we don't have this bylaw in place. As soon as we put it in place, then they're probably going to start to say, oh, look what we can do in Falmouth. So we do have to be careful how we go about it. And that's, like I said earlier, that was my original initiative when I went to the planning board and asked them to consider taking this up, because I was worried about the next recession and the next time when the super wealthy corporate owners were going to swoop in and buy up a swash of land here. It could happen. I don't know that it's going to. I've been kind of calmed down since I've looked into it a little bit more, but I guess Mr. Ahmed says he thinks it's happening a little bit already. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've put a lot of notes here, and you guys want to wait another month for the next meeting? 2 weeks is September 3rd. That's when you go back to school, right?
First day of school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So you probably don't want to have
So
a
that's
meeting
not a
on
good
that
idea.
day.
Well, well, if we meet on Wednesday, that would be, I'd be done with my second day of school, so I'd be just fully acclimated back. Have learned all 110 names by then.
And be ready to talk about
be
something
re-
else already.
I would be open to a 2 weeks or 1 month.
What's other people feel like?
I'd like to keep the momentum going. So 2 weeks, I think, it's great. Is that the 10th?
That's the 3rd, right?
Oh,
Or would you rather have it the 10th? We can be flexible with our schedule.
10th or 17th work. The 24th may be difficult for me.
Where's the calendar?
Lawrence tour, that's the daytime. Is the 10th good for everybody?
Where did I take a look?
That's
That's a Wednesday.
2, 3, that's 3 weeks away. That's Wednesday, the 10th, yeah.
That would work for me.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay,
Wednesdays are a good day of the week for me. It's
Good.
between hockey practices, so yes.
excellent.
Yep. At 6 p.m.
Yes, 6 p.m. and we'll stay here. And does anybody have any particular agenda item that they want to get to?
Well, I think it would be good if I'm able to, I'll get through the data set from the Board of Health and I can have some figures ready for folks as far as, of those registered, what types of owners are there? And then how many does it seem as if people are operating?
Okay,
So I can have some data ready for that. And then we could consider also that we didn't get to all of our components this week.
okay. And then we can also
Review minutes.
review minutes, and we can also have use our notes to create some edits and additions to our next draft of
Yeah.
our bylaw. We'll keep the bylaw on every week, and we'll continue to tune it up as we go along and try to,
And maybe we could, either at the beginning or the end, sort of see if we're syncing our notes on our bylaw.
okay,
Yeah, just so we're not losing things by accident.
right?
Um,
And you can always email me, and if you think of something that specifically should be added to the agenda, we can add it.
Doug, I guess, the question for me is, do we think some of these issues have percolated enough? Like, for example, my idea of prohibiting investor only. Do we have a consensus for that? If we do, I could give a shot at drafting it. Just start to tick off some of the issues.
Well, do we have a consensus? I didn't get that because,
No, I understand. That's why I was saying, I think the next meeting would be helpful if we start to work through.
Okay.
See where we do.
see where,
Yeah.
points of agreement on things,
Right, that,
things that we can check off.
yeah, right, and then maybe move to drafting. And also, by the way, on that, I would encourage you if you could, I don't know who you talk to at the town manager's office, but I was very discouraged to hear the associate town council say he's not going to do our drafting. I can do some drafting, but again, I kind of didn't town council draft the last.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I didn't hear
So I
that
think you'll find
specifically.
I did
Something
hear that
different.
specifically.
Okay,
That's not the norm. I mean, honestly, I do the Board of Health. The Board of Health writes their regulations. We submit the draft to town council, and town council goes through it. That's generally how at least the Board of Health does their regulations.
yeah, I hope that was a misunderstanding.
If you could clarify that, that'd be
will.
very.
Yeah. We'll have a rough draft. We'll have our thoughts on paper.
Oh, yeah, but it's just sort of conceptual language versus putting it in the reg.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, thanks.
Anybody else?
Motion adjourned? Oops.
Motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Absolutely. I want to thank the people.